training is not about maximal intensity all the time. That will never work for the masses. Over 15 years of fitness as a profession, I've always kind of optimized in every way possible, and that's what's making me feel like I'm valuable. But there's like major trade-offs. The vast majority of the people I'm speaking to do not care about optimization. They want to feel just a little bit better.
What are we chasing as non-athletes? Trying to get fit, stay fit, play the long game.
I dropped out of med school to go be a CrossFit coach. Think about that for a sec. It's like, whoa. So I was very committed. I was like as fit as I've ever been. We just won the championship, thinking that this is the only way to be in shape and this is the only way to feel like I matter. That chips away at you for sure. I was as broken as I'd ever been in my life. So I was in a desperate place of like, I need to figure out how to re-engage in a passionate way with fitness to sort of heal so that you can go and express your best self. When somebody's coming in without that, then the last thing they need is the hammer. They want to feel they can do a lot, having fun. Maybe this is like the first time I'm reflecting on it, but it was like such a powerful phase of my career because I was like, whoa, people are looking to me purely for what I'm offering them as a coach, not you are a great athlete. Okay, how am I going to define my own training approach? Well, it's going to be functional, but it's also going to be a little bit of the bodybuilding stuff I did in the past. And it just resonated so well with so many people and me. I was like, okay, I'm the functional bodybuilding guy now. I think for me and maybe you, a lot of people coming out of their like intensity phase of training where it was like, how can I just make myself suffer? You're just like, that's the assault bike. And then if you want to like actually practice some like sustainable cycling, the concept too is just a little bit gentler and you can dig in, you can crank the fan up, the resistance. Yeah. But it's like, it's just not the same full body terror of the assault.
Yeah, you're right. They're absolutely two different systems.
Yes.
And I think when I look at the C2 products, I like that one the best. Because form is much easier. Like rowing, there's more technique involved. And then with I haven't been able to I haven't spent a ton of time on the ski erg. And whenever I've done it, it's been in like high intensity. So I haven't been as focused on technique.
Yeah.
So that thing is kind of crippling for me.
Yeah. I like it as a tool to like mix in for people because it's like, if you want to get upper body stimulus through like a conditioning tool, it's definitely the best one, more so than any of the others. But it also doesn't like, if your technique's bad, you're not really like in a bad position to get hurt or something on a ski. Yeah. So like ski, C2 bike, and then like a runner. Those would be like the three that are you just can't mess them up really. You just go. Whereas like rowing, there's a lot of technique to it. Yeah. Like cranking bike, it's like getting on and off of it. Like people get caught, their foot gets caught sometimes. They're just like, there's accidents that could happen there. Plus they're like, nobody enjoys it. No. And we've been talking a lot about like how much enjoying fitness is important for like the longevity of it and sustainability of it, where it's like, yeah, you can go and suffer and it might get you your results faster. But then once you get your results, you're like, I don't want to do that anymore. And then, okay, what are you going to do to sustain your fitness? So those would be my picks for like groups fitness settings, like runner, ski, and a C2 bike.
If you had to pick one to recommend for like, John Q Public, just kind of getting into it. He's getting his dumbbells, heavy balls, a few other things. And there's like one piece of like aerobic equipment. What would you recommend?
If they're going to put the time in to learn how to use it, the rower. Because I think that just encompasses so many things. You can do more from a fitness standpoint with it. Different movement pattern. Like the movement pattern is more like full body. You're getting hinging, squatting, upper body pulling. You can do it long, you can do it short and intense. But if they're not willing to like learn proper technique and they just want something that's kind of idiot proof.
How about a deconditioned 55-year-old guy?
I would want them just walking a ton. Like I wouldn't even get them doing any like hard conditioning. I would have them doing weight training, resistance training, and walk. and they could walk on a treadmill or they could just go outside and walk. I wouldn't even bother with like a lot of hard conditioning or any type of conditioning necessarily in their training program.
Yeah.
That the deconditioned 55-year-old person needs to do weight training. They need to learn how to weight train through full range of motion to improve their mobility. That's going to help them more than any stretching program. They need to start to dial in their nutrition. And if they're doing lots of high intensity stuff, it's going to make it really difficult to like deal with super high appetite, increased appetite. So it's like keep things moderate, low intensity. Walking is great for that. Weighted walking is great for that. And then the weight training. It's like I put them on a step, like a minimum mandatory step count every day. Basic nutrition protocol that's based around getting enough protein and then teaching them how to make good food choices around like high volume foods that, food swaps. Like let's start swapping a couple of these things in, not being like cut out everything that you love.
What would that be like if they like sandwiches? Like you'd swap out the bread for...
Not even necessarily. It's like, hey, you love a sandwich? Like you've been making it with this bread, but if you buy this bread, it's about 2/3 or half the calories. So let's just swap out this bread. And then you love to put on mayonnaise, but if you choose the light mayonnaise, it's another like 50% reduction in calories. And, just start with things that are going to start to lower their total caloric intake at the beginning. I mean, me, I'm a huge fan of high food quality. And yeah, I maybe want the processed bread out at some point. And maybe I'd want them to take out the mayonnaise and maybe go for a different fat option or something that's not, maybe make it themselves or, down the line. But as a first step, those swaps or those like removals are just too difficult for people. And it's like removal doesn't work when you move laterally to the same product that's just a little bit lower energy. I mean, if you take somebody who's deconditioned and eating a poor diet and you reduce their caloric intake by 500 calories without them even knowing because they're eating the same meals, it's like a massive, massive unlock for people. They're like, whoa, most people's diet related issues are a overconsumption thing. Most of their health related issues, like they're overweight, they feel sluggish, they're starting to have inflammation, their blood pressure's out of whack. It's like if we reduce their caloric intake and get them to start maybe losing some weight and then moving a little bit more, increase their expenditure through something as simple as walking and 3 times a week weight training, they're going to just within 3 to 6 months, they're going to just feel like a massive difference. And they're not going to think, oh, this was so hard, I can't do this for the rest of my life. They're going to be like, oh, this is relatively easy. And now you've got them bought in, and now you're at the 6 months, you're like, hey, maybe we swap out this bread, and hey, why don't we just do like a salad at lunch with some meat, and like, why don't we try this like other carbohydrate, and you can start to then deepen their understanding of the quality of the food that they're eating and the choices that they're making.
Love that. Yeah. Get them in this, like it's the whole baby step method. And I think a lot of people, I've been there, am there from time to time, even now, where, type A, like I can get shit done. I can change. I can be disciplined. It just doesn't take a lot to fall back in when there's such a substantial jump in change in behavior and habit. And it's like, for me, it's been finding out what caused the habit, what causes me to reach for the stimulants, whatever that is, sitting with that. And like, as I was telling you, last night, the more I've sat with those things without the ability to have stimulants and to really sit in what that feels like, it's given me the space to understand much better where that all originated from. And when I know that, I know what that story is. I know that agreement that I made with myself, that I needed to do these things in order to earn love, get attention, be a good boy, not get in trouble, all those things. And when I realized that I'm 52 now, and it's not about being a good boy, And that 7 and 8-year-old is not to be in the driver's seat in making, in kind of really driving the decisions of those little kind of micro decisions we have to make on a daily basis. When I can separate that, it's like, oh yeah, I'm not in trouble. I don't need to go out there and hit the gym really hard and get jacked up to be loved. You know, there was a part when I was getting into CrossFit back in 08, 09, there was just this element of, you know, there's a lot of great stuff that happened with it. It was like, I felt better about myself because I was taking care of myself. I was showing up for myself. But there was a part of me that I did like the attention, and I also associated the positive attention, if you want to call it that. You know, it was almost like I had to live up to that. It's like, oh, now you've set this out there. Now you got to now that's your new identity. You're that guy.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, isn't that interesting?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I kind of was talking about this not too long ago today, but I did the same thing. Like, I've over 15 years of being in, you know, fitness as a profession, but also being in like kind of a public facing role as a fitness coach, a fitness athlete, a fitness influencer, all the different hats, all the different names, you know, of like, okay, I've established that I have a certain, you know, level of excellence in this thing. And I've approached it a particular way. And I've always kind of optimized in every way possible. And okay, now people expect that from me. And that's the brand is, you know, and it just, and hey, people are giving me attention for that. That's what's maybe feeding me, making me feel like I'm valuable to this community of health conscious or people who want to be more health conscious. But there's like there's major trade-offs to like constantly thinking in a way of like optimization. Like, we got to do it perfectly. We got to do everything right. And I fully realized, you know, somewhere in the last few years that the vast majority of the people I'm speaking to on my fitness platform do not care about optimization. They want to feel just a little bit better today. Like, they want to feel good. They don't need to feel incredible tomorrow. And they're not necessarily looking to change everything. They want to, and when I've tried to get them to change everything, and when I've had that expectation of them, like, hey, you're going to, you know, I'm like thinking back to like Marcus, like in his first few years of being a CrossFit coach.
Ooh,
what I asked of people, you know, what I was like, come on, you know, I'm like talking to like people who are at my stage of life now with like young kids. And I was a 26-year-old coach who was like, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. Like, I know you're not sleeping, but we got to do this. And it's like, damn, I was, you know, I didn't know what I didn't know.
Yeah, that's right.
And now I'm just getting a bit more clear on, you know, yeah, I would have at one point I would have looked at your food log and been like, yeah, that sandwich has got to come out. We got to put this in. We got to do that. And now it's like, oh yeah, sandwich. Hell yeah. You got some protein in there. Great. Hey, that bread that you're eating, like, I know this brand, like, it's pretty good. It's about half the calories. So I want to just swap that out, you know? Like, you like mayo? I love mayo. Yeah. But that's like, that squeeze you just put on there is 250 calories. Like, it can't be that good. You know, right now we got to lose some weight. And so let's get this one in. It can't be that good. I mean, maybe it is that good. I don't know.
Damn.
So yeah, baby steps is like, baby steps though are not sexy for people either. No. Right. That's why they maybe look for like, oh, what's like the really big change I can make and, you know, crush this in the next 2 weeks because I got to go on vacation and I want to look better. And, you know, just hearing somebody talk about like, you know, hey, if I do this like coffee enema, I always feel tighter and looking good and helps me out. And I'm like, okay, like that's a short-term fix. Like, right. That's not really making but there's like these things that are sexy to people because it's going to give them something quick. And I think people are fatiguing on that. And also in a way they're like, oh, but those aren't working. So like, what do I actually do? It's like, we got to make the baby steps seem sexy. And if you do it in the right way and you get them started and consistent, and then you help reflect back to them the changes that are really happening. I mean, even baby stepping people in 30 days, they're going to be like, whoa, I lost like 5 pounds. Like, I feel really good, because they're really sticking to the simple steps that matter. Like you said, who's the 55-year-old that's out of shape and needs to get started? It's like, don't go do 5 workouts a week that crush you. Do 3 hard training sessions, with weights, like what we did, but maybe a little bit more, a little longer. We did 20 minutes of just a pump before we came out here, so we'd look good,
just for the camera.
Feel good. Yeah, totally. No, but like that kind of resistance training, and then move, like walk, get 10,000 steps a day, 12. Like, that's going to take awareness and intention to fight the culture of sitting and being sedentary for that person you're talking about. Get out and walk. And if they commit to that for a month and make 2 to 3 food swaps each day, because most days people are eating the same thing anyway.
Oh yeah.
It's like, this is my pattern. This is what I do. It's like, hey, you're eating this for breakfast. Like, great. Like, let's just add a little bit more of the protein, and then, swap this out. Right. And then for lunch, this is how you change that. Help them just orient around their already like built in program, their habits, make a couple tweaks. You start this flywheel of like, oh, I'm feeling better. I lost some weight, and I didn't have to do 75 hard to get there.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. And you had mentioned, do kind of hard, 3 hard workouts. And it's just like really defining that for people, because, and maybe this is just my lens of it, because I did kind of grow up in CrossFit from 2008 till now. Hard doesn't mean that.
No, it's a relative term, right? Like,
yes.
What's hard for, somebody who's 6 years into the CrossFit journey is not the same hard that somebody who's basically off the couch, or, just hasn't done anything for a long time. They can go and do 6 exercises, 2 to 3 sets of each with some weights, moderate reps, full range of motion, drenching in sweat. They feel their muscles getting worked, and that's going to feel hard for them. And this is something I heard a couple of years ago, which really hit home for me. When people go, like, the instant gratification, like giving them something that makes them feel right away like they're changing. If you have the option of going for a run, you get some endorphins, but those wear off, and those endorphins don't make you feel in your body like there's anything that's necessarily changed. You don't feel like a physique or a weight loss change. Now, you take somebody who hasn't done weight training before, and you get them to go and do a good resistance training session. The principles of like good CP work. We've learned about it. It's like a Poliquin style GBC superset like type of thing. This is what we do in functional bodybuilding. You get them to lift against resistance. They will 100% in the moment feel a pump. They'll feel their muscles filled up with blood and nutrients and everything. And what it'll do is it'll press against their skin, and they'll feel like, oh, whoa, like, oh my God, I'm feeling something in there. They'll feel the parts of their body that they want to emerge from underneath their adipose tissue, their fat. And that is a feeling, Arnold talked about it as like this great sensation as a bodybuilder, but for a beginner, when they feel that, that is like a powerful motivator to like, oh, I can feel the muscle pressing against my skin, and that feels good. Even if they can't see definition yet, or they can't see striations of muscles, that is really motivating for folks, more so than like, I got super sweaty and I did like the hard conditioning running session.
Yeah, I've never thought about that, because right now I'm sitting here, and again, as I was saying, I haven't really weight trained in a while. Certainly not heavy. I did a little bench and some pull-ups the other day, but even that was, at 80% effort.
Mm-hmm.
And so this little 20-minute thing we did, I'm just sitting here feeling just like
these things are like a weight.
Feels alive. Yeah. Just like feel that nice tension.
Yeah.
And it was, there was a level of intensity, but it wasn't about the breathing. And so that felt really good.
Yeah. Cause I think most people associate like, okay, I got to go work out. I got to get back into working out. I got to do something. And then they immediately go to like, it means I got to go to boot camp. I got to like do a burpee, get up and down off the floor. And I got to like suffer and someone's going to be yelling at me and, or I don't know, like that's a barrier.
Yeah.
That's a big barrier.
So with your clients, because I'm thinking about this and I just see this as, you mentioned the coffee enema and that's like a short-term thing. It's like, okay, do you bring into the conversation, like, look, you're 40 years old, like we're on a 40-year plan here until you're 80 or whatever. Mm-hmm. And we're not trying to just cut corners here because this is a long journey. Yeah. And, because we are in a society, it's no secret that we do want the instant gratification.
Yeah.
I certainly fall victim to it. And so in this space, it's huge, right? And everybody's selling shit to people with false promises. And so how do you address that with your clients, or like, how do you just allow them to take a wider view of like what they're doing and why they're doing it?
Yes. I mean,
or is it just in the coaching, like by simply, doing it that way, like making the really small changes and getting buy-in that way and reminding them, as you said, reflecting back what the changes are that they've made and how that's been a positive.
Yeah. I think, I don't like downplay the importance of some instant or short-term gratification. Like you need that for people to get bought in. If they go a month and they haven't seen a change and you're like, oh, it's a slow game, we're going to get there. They're like, sorry, I'm not, you lost me. So you have to get something up front. And then, they're like, that's the work. If you're working with somebody to just be like, okay, what's the biggest lever we can pull right now to give them the biggest change? You do like that's where you do a fitness audit or like an intake on somebody and you're like, oh wow, like the nutrition's the part that you're not paying. You like going to the gym already and you like this thing, but you don't even know anything. Okay, we're going to just like hyper focus on that. That's what's going to get you, those shorter term results. And then we'll come back and circle back to better training practices and better sleep practices and better this practices. So yes, getting into something short term that gives them a win. And I'm even okay if the person's ready and they're willing, not necessarily the person who's like, I've not done anything, because small changes are going to be a big win for them. But some clients come and they're like, I really have struggled to see results in the past and I've tried all these different things. So then I'll zero in like, this is where we're going to make the most change. Like you have the potential to make the most change. Let's get aggressive with it for 30 days. Let's actually do something that gets them like, maybe the person's like, I'm ready to adopt a new diet. I'm ready to make big changes. Okay, I vet you. You are. I think you're ready to take it on. Let's put you into like a more restrictive diet, like something that's not sustainable for 40 years. Let's just get after it. And then they like really, and then you show them, I think it's important to like not make it a secret, like what we're doing. It's like, this is what we're doing. And these are the 3 or 4 things that we're tracking. We track them every day. We're doing science here, right? These are the inputs. These are the outputs every day. Let's look at them because they're going to do this little up and down dance. It's not going to just be, smooth sailing. You're not going to see your weight go down in a straight line and you're not going to see your strength go up in a straight line. It's going to kind of do this. But if we track it every day and we do it long enough, few weeks, you're going to see these trend lines and you're going to see all of the data. And if the thing's not moving in the right direction, you're going to know that what you're doing is not working. It's not because of me. Like I didn't give you the right plan. It's like, this isn't working and we need to change something. Let's change this. Let's change this. So giving them clear insight into like really comes down to how much you move in each day, how many steps you taking, what are you putting in your body, how many grams of protein and how many calories are you eating? Are you paying attention to that? No, I kind of just wing it. It's like, well, that's why you're not making progress. Like some people make progress that way. They make the right choices, and it's kind of just lucky, or they're in the right environment, or I don't know, maybe it's how they were raised and the culture around food that they have from years ago. They don't track food and they still have, healthy habits, but that's not you, because you're presenting without that background. So it's like how much you move, what you put in your body, are you resistance training? And then really it's like, are you sleeping? And then we look at what happened to your body weight, what happened to your mood, and we can track some of those more subjective things. But like many people are looking at like, how do I change my body weight? I've carried too much body weight for too long, and breaking it down relatively simply like that. And then once you get them bought in on like, I've made change, I know how to make change, I want to keep going. Then you're like, okay, well, let's kind of slow things down for a second. And let's talk about, what are you liking doing? What's going to keep you going for a long time? And, you have to lift, you have to move your body, and you have to be conscious of the food you're eating. So there's a lot of ways to do each of these things. You could go for a 60-minute walk in the morning, or you could take 4 15-minute walks a day. I don't know which going to work in your lifestyle now. Are you going to put a walking tread desk or a walking pad underneath your desk and do some steps while you're taking a call? Let's try that. We can try it a few different ways. Nutrition. How are we going to get you enough protein and, not over consuming? Maybe it's paleo. Maybe it's this. Maybe it's whatever. There's a lot of different ways to approach it. Strength training. You want to do some bodybuilding, or you want to do a different type of training? Do you want to do more high intensity CrossFit stuff, or do you want to do, more slow tempo weight training work? Mm-hmm. Either way, you're getting that dose, and that's what we need. And that can change over time. You don't have to do the same thing for the next 30 years, because people get stuck. Like if I'm going to be stuck in a 30-year, of the same thing, people need more variety and variation and just evolution than that.
Right. Well, we could spend hours talking about this stuff, and it's really, really valuable. And I want to get into some other stuff that I think. So you and I, let me just give a little background. You and I have known each other, we thought like 14 years or something. Was it 2010?
Yep.
We were at the certification.
Yeah.
Together. There's an OPT certification at that point, but we met then and got to know each other a little bit over the years. And then in 2014, James Fitzgerald and I had the Phoenix franchise in the National Pro Grid League, which is a professional fitness league. You were the first person we signed. We could sign a certain number of athletes, and then I think we had to draft the rest. And then we were together for 3 seasons. You were our captain, and we'll probably talk about some grid stuff later on. But just to give people context that we've known each other, I've been into fitness. I've loved fitness. It really helped me transition out of trading. It gave me, kind of that North Star. And for you, it's been a big part of your life. A bigger part even. You competed in the CrossFit Games 7 times?
Yeah, 6 times. 6 times. Yeah.
6 times. And then the Grid League for 3 seasons. And now you're probably best known today, a million followers on Instagram with functional bodybuilding. You developed this program, and I'd love to just talk about the birth of. You and I talked about it the other night, but I love it's such a beautiful journey of how these things come about. Just never in the way we think it's going to happen. But you've built an incredible following. You're serving so many people. You asked me today on the golf course, like what kinds of fitness stuff that I'm into. And it's like, I don't really follow that much fitness stuff. I kind of use my own understanding and experience to kind of draw up stuff. But right before I went away, on my men's retreat, I signed up for your program, and I just haven't transitioned to it yet. But I was just blown away with the variety, this is something for everybody there. 5 different tracks, and I'll let you kind of talk about that. But and then like the frequency of training, and are you training 3 days a week or 5 days a week, and just where you are today with that program is there's something for everybody, and it's I grew up in some ways in this space as an with the individual client. James was my coach for a while. And then when he started to transition out, I worked with James Taylor a bit. And anyway, it's just not like, I don't need an individual coach programming for me anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I told you what I need is to have fun. I need to be like fired up to go work out. And, oftentimes it's by myself. And so then it's different than going to train with a buddy or a group of friends where you're getting the socialization. It's like, if I'm going to go in the gym, at this stage in my career, I'm 52 and like, it's got to be fun because there's other shit I'd probably rather do. And it's a little bit of almost like PTSD from the CrossFit days of how hard some of that shit was. So I'm working on reprogramming myself in my expectations. And I think what you've laid out with functional bodybuilding is just a beautiful articulation of that. And it's something that, depending on the season for me, I can find the track that's going to fit for me. And maybe it's 3 days a week. And then I'm just doing some aerobic work on my bike erg, on other days. And maybe it's 5 days a week and I really want to feel that resistance training. But anyway, I would love to hear I know it's kind of a long story, but like, how did this come about?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if we go back to 2010, when we met, I was only 2 years out of, having dropped out of medical school.
That's right.
And so I was like, I was on the grind because of a number of reasons, but, a strong family lineage of doctors and healthcare, and just growing up in that world and being really drawn to the sciences, and kind of being told from a young age, like, you're going to be a great doctor like your dad and your brother. You're going to be the best of all of them because you're the brightest, getting the best grade, but whatever. So I was kind of just marching down this path for lack of a real understanding of what I wanted out of my future, my career, my life. Not being particularly drawn to any one field of medicine, but just like, okay, I guess I'm going to do the doctor thing. And I really love fitness. I love nutrition. I love that side of things. But there's not really good models for like how to turn that into a career that looks like a physician's career. Like, this is my model of success, is my dad, who's, international healthcare celebrity. Like, he was like a prolific researcher in his field and was giving talks internationally for 20 years. Keynote presenter at every major radiology conference in the world because he was a big deal. And he did some amazing, like, groundbreaking work in, ultrasound fetal diagnosis, like was part of the team that did the first fetal surgery ever. There was like a Times magazine article with like this little fetal hand on the fingertip, like holding onto the fingertip of the surgeon, the first ever, surgery. My dad was the radiologist that was in the room on the team that basically pioneered this whole thing. So I'm like, I want to be successful. That's what success looks like. You go and, go to higher levels of education. You become a physician. Like, am I going to be a lawyer? Am I going to be a doctor? Am I going to do something, some path that is like, I didn't have entrepreneurial, like, anything in my world. It was like, you go this route. So that was what I was doing. And I just kind of went the path. And then, like, I was in medical school. I was like, man, this is just not it for me. Like, I am not doing well. This is not taking me where I want to go.
How long were you in medical school?
A year and some change.
Yep.
And I left very drawn to the fitness community, and CrossFit was where I just like landed to like get my reps in.
So had you done CrossFit at that point?
A little bit. I dabbled. I kind of
got an athlete. You were a really great soccer player.
Yeah, I played a lot of college sports. I played college soccer, played a lot of sports, but got really into fitness in college. And got like introduced to CrossFit, and I saw it. I was kind of dabbling like on the .com, the .com scene.
Yeah.
And but I saw this like emerging community, and I was like, oh man, like I think I want to be a part of that. And so I dropped out of med school to go be a CrossFit coach. Like, think about that for a second. It's like, whoa, just, and having to like unprogram like that mentality of like, this is what success looks like. Buddy. And it's like, no, maybe this is what I need to do now, because I'm just like hitting bottom here. So when you met me in 2010, I was just like, I was fresh out of like, you just left the thing that was kind of a sure bet to be successful.
Oh,
you got to figure out how to make this other thing successful. And so I was very committed to like, I'm going to be the best coach possible. CrossFit's the community that I'm going to land in and get my reps in. At the time, it was like, you didn't even have to market. Like, people just coming in and just wanting to do stuff, at your gym and learn. And I was doing it right, doing it wrong, just whatever. I could just learn and grow. And so 7 years of CrossFit was like me building a new foundation for like, okay, I'm doing the thing. I can be successful here. I made it as a coach. I made it as a business owner. I made it as an athlete. I created like that understanding of this is what I can. I didn't make a mistake in leaving medical school. But after that season of life, it was like, okay, now I'm getting married. We're about to have a baby. And this CrossFit thing, I'm ready to evolve past this, like not the people and not what I was doing, but like, okay, there's more to this than just group fitness. There's like coaching people. There's a world out there of how to coach people. And it's not just group fitness. It's different things. And so I sort of like parted ways with my business partners, and I had also kind of parted ways with the sport of CrossFit and grid. I was done competing because it was a very large commitment in terms of time and physical energy for very little return in terms like monetary return. Like, I couldn't justify 30 hours a week of training anymore when I was like, now I got to really like support my life, my family, like my next phase of life. And I had, beyond 7 years of CrossFit, I had almost 15 years of fitness experience. And I was like, CrossFit's been amazing and I love it and I don't want to stop doing it. But there's all these other things I've done in the past that also felt amazing. I did Paul Chek stuff. I did Charles Poliquin stuff. I did collegiate strength and conditioning. I did bro splits at the gym. Like, there's a lot of ways to do the fitness thing that go beyond, going hard and fast and doing the high intensity CrossFit. And that was when I started to like, okay, how am I going to define my own training approach? It was like, well, it's going to be functional, but it's also going to be a little bit of the bodybuilding stuff I did in the past. And it's going to blend some things together. And if we stop trying to chase like elite performance as it was written by the CrossFit, people, there's a lot of ways to do it. And I'm just a student of fitness through and through. Like, where do I spend my time? Like, I'm just studying fitness all the time still, trying to learn from as many people as possible and take in a lot of information and then disseminate it in like a way that people can understand and like digest. And so I didn't know what to call it, but one day on social media, I had just done like a workout and like I had shown clips of it. And I think I was doing like some kipping pull-ups, but then I was also doing like some curls and some landmine presses and some band stuff and some tempo bodybuilding. And I was like, man, I got a sick pump today. And I did some functional training. It was like functional bodybuilding. I just like wrote that in a caption, and then functional bodybuilding. Like, people were writing in the comments like, that's sick. I want to do that. Like, what's functional bodybuilding? Oh. And it totally just was like a very organic thing. So much so that I was like, I like went and Googled functional bodybuilding. Like, does anyone have this trademark? Like, is someone else doing this? And there was like one T Nation article from like 2000 that was like how to functional bodybuild. And it was basically a bodybuilder, like somebody writing about bodybuilding with full range of motion. I was like, okay, well, that's one thing. And then some guy had like the URL, functionalbodybuilding.com, but he was doing nothing with it. And he was just like a personal trainer that like called himself a functional bodybuilder. And I still never heard from him after that. I was like, okay, like this is a thing. And it just resonated so well with so many people and me. I was like, okay, I'm the functional bodybuilding guy now. And I just started to build a brand around that. And the method is really just a method of like, I'm a student of it all. And like, I don't want to be in a container of one thing. And I don't think other people want that either. They want to feel they can do a lot of different stuff. Speaking to kind of I have a deep desire to be having fun and just mixing it up over time. And as you know, coming up in CrossFit gyms, you know, it was like sacrilegious to like do bicep curls. Like people just talked shit about like, we don't do bicep. I mean, in my level 1, like certificate course for CrossFit, they were like, we don't do bicep curls because you can't develop enough power to get intensity. And I was like, cool, got it. Yeah. Roger that. No bicep curl. I was like drinking the Kool-Aid. Yeah, right?
Me too.
Yeah. So we don't do that. We don't do this. We don't do that. And then towards the end of like coaching,
we do med ball cleans.
Yeah, but we do med ball cleans. Towards the end, it was like, it'd be so funny. Like I think back and there was like a bunch of our members, like we finished the workout and they would go over and like run the rack and do some dumbbell curls. And they were kind of like in the back. And I'm like, man, people still like to do this stuff, you know, like they're into it. And, you know, like, why are we not celebrating that? Why are we not like including all of that together in a way? And when I did do that, and when I put out a program that was people did CrossFit with bodybuilding to my CrossFit, you know, my core audience at that point were CrossFitters. They loved it. I loved it. They loved it. We were all into it. It was like a renaissance. Like it was crazy how people reacted to that. And I told you the story of how it came about. It was very like, it was the last thing I wanted to do was to write a fitness program that was like an online, you know, ebook. I was like anti doing it, but I had a business partner, or my business partner now, like was persistent. And she was like, you should try this. Sati was like, you should do this. This woman cold pitched me like to do something. I was like, no. Okay, fine. And then people really responded to it. And it just sort of like, and now what's funny is that like many of my peers in the CrossFit space that were able to transition to businesses that were successful, that have online training programs. If you look at all the big ones now, like guys I competed with back in the day, they've got their online programs. Yeah. They all have a bodybuilding component to it. And it was like, I really feel like we paved the way. And it was like, now everyone does functional bodybuilding in some way. You know, it's just a thing that's out there because people wanted it. And not just because it was variety, but because training is not about maximal intensity all the time. It should not be that. And that will never work for the masses. You need intensity to see change, but you need consistency to win the long game. And if you do it too hard, you don't get people very consistent. They burn out, they get injured. It you know, it's like save the high intensity all the time for the elite athletes that are trying to be the best in the world. And they take calculated risks to do it. And if they get hurt, it's part of the game, whatever. That's not what you're here for if you're in the general population. So we dose a little intensity, we give enough variety, we bring in other modalities, some bodybuilding, right? Bodybuilding's hard, but it's not doing, 21 thrusters as fast as you can and then jumping on a box and then doing burpees and then, right? Like the sufferfest, like thinking CrossFit Open, like, oh God, I don't want, to ask someone to do that 3 or 5 days a week. That's a recipe for just a lot of eventual burnout. It's early days excitement, enthusiasm, and just like, oh my God, I found it.
Yes.
Like I've got the drug, but then the drug just becomes, a problem after time. Yeah.
I'd love for you to speak on what you felt like post grid season, post CrossFit Games, just to give people an understanding of like, when you're at that level and you're at the elite in the fitness game, you need to train, for that kind of capacity. And, you leave it all on the field or on the grid, thinking about Lance, like Lance trains hard. And then like Tour de France, like his body's wasted away at the end of that. Right. And it's all like, cause that's why he does all the training at that level. So what does it feel like after, just so people don't, just get an idea of like, what are we chasing as non-athletes? We're general population. We're trying to get fit, stay fit, play the long game, hormones in a good place, sleep, all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I would imagine, I was like, you finish the tour. What does Lance do? Probably just doesn't even touch a bike for, months. Like it's just, okay, take a rest. Unless there's like another Olympic event coming up soon or whatever. But, and same thing with like NFL football player. What's the next 3 months after the Super Bowl look like if you just won the Super Bowl? Not much, just chilling, right? And because the body needs that kind of time to recover from that peak. And that was like the peak in CrossFit was kind of a little bit of a different animal because we had to peak.
Oh shit!
Multiple times.
Would it be 3 times?
It was kind of like 3 peaks, especially if you add in grid league.
Oh,
so 2016 was like a new level for me because I peaked at regionals and then 2 months later peaked at CrossFit and then was ready to take a break. But then 3 weeks later, I'm in Utah with you and the team.
3 weeks later.
It was really quick. And it was like, and we're going to try and cram a competitive season of grid into 4 weeks or 3 weeks. It was very short, if you recall. So it was, I don't know. It was like tour of Italy, 2 months later, Tour of France, and then 2 weeks later, another Tour de France. Like, I guess, I don't have experience in that, but it felt like that. And it was just boom, 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 like hormonal, just chaos, like nervous system, adrenaline, chaos, physical trauma, chaos. Like, and I wasn't like getting injured necessarily, but it was like 285 pounds just laminating on my body and bending over and picking up 405 pounds off the ground as fast as I possibly could. And, doing single leg squats as fast as I could with a 60-pound weight in my hand and, doing 20 muscle ups in a row, just like letting my body free fall from the air and just clanking on these rings and, just doing it because that was what we were doing. And so in October of 2016, I finished and I felt I was like as fit as I've ever been, right? We just won the championship and all the things. I was as broken as I had ever been in my life. And that's not the story that most people go through, but there was a large group of people that were pushing themselves day in and day out in a high intensity environment, thinking that this is the only way to be in shape. And this is the only way to be like proud of my fitness and to feel like, like I matter. And that chips away at you for sure. And I felt the peak of feeling like you're in the best shape and then the deepest low, this steep cliff fall off. And I had like, a few areas of my body that I was convinced were like, okay, maybe these are the stories of like, you just ruined something in your body because you just left it all out there when you played your sport. I had a shoulder injury that I was like, oh, I think this might be over. And I didn't even want to go to the gym. Like I didn't want to work out. I didn't want to do anything, but I'm like, I got a fitness business. I'm like still coaching all these people. If I'm not engaged in fitness myself, like I don't know how to be a coach. Like, I don't know how to coach people in something that I'm just not engaged in. So I was in a desperate place of like, I need to figure out how to re-engage in a passionate way with fitness. And what I just was doing ain't it for me anymore. I got to really change things up. So that's, and I have used this as like a kind of a method of coaching for a long time, which is like, I go in on something, I go all in and I push it to the limit. And then what that allows me to see the full like range of, I'm over here, but I've come through all these other phases. And so then I feel it gives me the tools to coach like people in a large range of abilities and desires and wants and goals. Cause I know how to like sort of think about it in different stages. And so, yeah, like experiencing the deepest burnout of my life. Yeah, not everyone's going through that, but I understand what needs to change in order to help somebody come back from a period of time where they're burned out. So those were really valuable lessons for me. And then the valuable lesson was like using fitness that I already knew and different ways of approaching it to sort of heal a broken body, or with a client, it's like heal a broken relationship with movement or with their career or whatever. It's like, let's use movement to create, like to build energy and to build resources inside of you so that you can go and express your best self. And when somebody's coming in without that, they're already kind of broken, then the last thing they need is the hammer. They need a different tool. And I've just been doing the hammer fitness for, you call it the hammer fitness for 7 years. Yeah. Like I got to try some other stuff. I still got the hammer when I need it.
Yeah.
But what are the other things? And that was just that, like, I was broken and then I built myself back up, and that process of building back up and getting excited and feeling passion for my career and for fitness and for movement and for my body and feeling good. I was like, that was the most informative period of time of my life as a coach by far. And I still go back to that and that story and what I learned in that time. It was like maybe a 5-month process, right before my first daughter was born. Man, that's like, that has given me it gave me the runway to build the business, but it also is what I come back to when I think about like, hey, yeah, like you're starting from kind of a broken or like, low place, and we got to build you back up. I'm not going to, shoot you out of a cannon to get you there. That's not how you do it.
Well, and also in that period, I did have one question, but I didn't want to forget this. Like, I don't know which one to choose. We're going to get to one and then we're going to hopefully get to the other. But in that period, and this is like anyone I've had on here who's an entrepreneur and created something, it's generally from something super challenging, healing something. There's some hardship. This thing is born, created, and it happens to fit in a place in the market because there's a need in the market. But the seeds of it aren't like, oh, people need to be doing functional bodybuilding, so like I'm going to go do that now.
Right.
Your shoulder injury put you on a different track than you'd been on for CrossFit and training for grid.
Yeah.
And I mean, you were sharing that with me the other night, and it's just like, it's such a fucking classic example of, and I want you to share that. And along the way, for me, I just want to be reminded that when I'm in the shittiest shit and it feels like it's never going to get better. And by the way, it always does. It just may take a little more time. Yeah. You may get a little deeper in the shit.
Yeah.
It always gets better. I think about right now, like you and I are feeling really good just about life in general. I'd say 6 months ago, I wasn't feeling that way.
Me neither.
And it's like, I can say, like, this is an example, no matter what's happened in the past, like today, I feel really good. So it means that it's always gotten better.
Yeah.
But like when I'm in, like, just really dealing with something or have something on my plate that feels overwhelming, I don't know what to do about it. There's generally nothing to do about it in that time. It's like fucking process what's happening.
Yeah.
Let it happen. Don't try to eject out of the situation. Whenever I've been in those situations, it's fucking classic. It's when I've had my greatest growth. It's when shit that I didn't know about myself emerged and I came out of it better. And it's not when things are going great. You know, I go have my best round of golf. I don't learn anything from that necessarily, except maybe keep the hands a little soft. Yeah. You know, but generally, like when things are going great, when I have a great investment or whatever, like I think I'm patting myself on the back, like, oh, you. When I've fucked up an investment, it's like, oh, don't do that again. What was it that led you to that?
Yeah.
You know, what was my accountability in that situation?
Yeah. I mean, if you can get, if we can all ever get to a place where it's like, I heard a Hormozy quote the other day, and he was like, the harder it gets, the more focused and excited I get, because I know this is where I'm going to learn something and grow. Right. And it's good to have a partner. Like my wife will tell me, like, when I'm going through something that feels hard, you know, it's just like there to remind me, it's like, you're going to learn something out of this that everyone's going to really get some value from. And that's how thankfully put myself in a position with my chosen career and work and business where, you know, oftentimes, like, well, really almost anywhere that I encounter challenge, whether it's a physical challenge, a relationship challenge, or, you know, something going on, psychological challenge around body image or food or something like that, working through that is painful and hard. I have my own challenges like everybody, but I can orient a little bit and be reminded by her, or just like, okay, this is always when I get the deepest connection to my customers or potential customers in my audience. Like, I can not only work through this for myself, but I can turn it into a win for other people. And that's what I got to like remember. And it's been hard to remember that when I'm really low. I'm like, there's nothing good's going to come out of this. It's terrible. Like, no one's going to learn anything. I'm not learning it. Like, it's hard to hold that, you know? So it is a superpower if you can be so aware, like, oh man, it's getting hard. Oh, this is when it's going to be good. Like, you're really kicking ass.
Jedi level shit.
Yeah, that is not there yet.
Usually the best I can do is just remind myself that this too shall pass. Like,
yeah,
it will get better. I just don't know when.
Yeah.
Kind of hoping it's sooner rather than later, but just like,
I'll take a magic pill right now just to make it all go away. I know the work is probably better for me to do, but just fucking give me the fast forward button, please. Yeah.
So you had your shoulder injury came out of like an incredible amount of intensity and capacity and work with CrossFit, then the compacted grid season on top of that.
Yeah. So that was like a physical injury. There was also just like the energetic, like low of, you know, for the first time I couldn't even remember how long. I was like, I don't want to work out. Like, that doesn't feel right.
Wow.
And thankfully, I had a fitness experience pre-CrossFit that was like, I could remember the days of just like going to the gym, working out and feeling good afterwards, not feeling like I just, you know, emptied the tank. And so I was like, yeah, I think I want to get back to that. And I think other people want to feel that too, you know, and I could remember that. But yeah, many of the biggest, like, we'll call them, they're not innovations, but sort of like the things that moved my fitness coaching further forward were just like, yeah, deep explorations that I was going through to solve some problem that I was personally having, and then sharing that with other people. And this actually is interesting because I was just speaking about this the other day, like, or I wrote something about it on Instagram, but like, I got started doing all of this back when James coached us. You remember I think he had probably made you do this as well, but we all had to have our own blog, or like that was like a requirement.
A blog?
Like, a blog.
Yeah, I wasn't part of that team.
Yeah. It was like because it was like he didn't have a way of like being able to see your training results. It was like, you need to have a blog where you post your training results and I'll just check it, kind of thing.
Sure.
I guess that was like, yeah. So I was like kind of into writing. So post college, before I went to medical school, I had like 2 gap years, and I traveled a lot. I traveled like all throughout Southeast Asia and did like the backpacking thing, and got really into just writing and journaling and blogging. I was like doing a travel blog thing back when I was like internet cafes and go and write travelblog.org. The Juggernaut was my little, and it's like me and in Cambodia and Vietnam, and writing these things. And so I like that. And then James like, you got to post these things on a blog and give me your results. And so I started just like sharing my results, but then also just like writing. I didn't know if anyone would read it, but I was like writing my thoughts about the fitness journey and what it like, every step of it. And it was kind of just like a journal that I was keeping. And when I kind of created like the landing page for it or whatever, it was like, who am I? It's like a WordPress thing I put together. It was like, sharing makes the journey. Like that was kind of this tagline I had, where it was like, I'm here to do the thing, to do the big deep dive into fitness. And then I want to share it with everybody else and showcase like the challenges and the problems that I'm solving through fitness, like what I'm learning about myself. And so like what was a blog back in the day to like show my coach my training results was sort of my first dip into like, well, solve a problem or work on something, deeply invest in learning, and then share it with the people who might read it, and this was pre-social media.
I was like, say, yeah, that's social media
Facebook,
right there.
Facebook existed, but like it wasn't being used in the way that it was, it's being used now.
There's no influencers or that
and I kept up the blog for almost 4 years until I started to kind of lose steam on it. And then Instagram came out, and I was like, oh, I can just post something and write a little caption. Oh, that'll be like my new blog. It's a little easier, user interface. People are like checking it out. And then I started doing that. And so it's always been this process for me of like, go invest energy and thought into something health and fitness related, and then share about that. And then that has kind of been how I've communicated with people that are interested in what I'm talking about, Well,
that takes us to, see, I want to segue. It's a perfect segue, but there was this other part that when did you know that you were done as a competitive athlete? Was it like you woke up one day and it was 2 years later and you're like, oh, I guess I'm not doing this anymore? Or was it, I got to kind of make a decision here and I'm going to hang up the wrist wraps and walk off the floor?
Yeah, I think I wanted to hold on to the idea of being a competitive athlete for several more years after the last, season of competing. But I think when we had our second kid, like we had our first kid and I was like still training pretty hard and thinking like, oh, maybe I'll make a comeback and, I'll do like the masters competitions or things like that. And I was still performing at a pretty high level and was capable of doing quite a bit. And of course, watching the sport that I used to be a part of, I was like, oh, I could still do all that,
Yeah.
Like I wasn't doing the work to get ready for the competitions, but I was like, I'm capable.
It felt, capable. Yeah. Good point.
Yeah, I'm capable, but I'm not putting in the work yet. Which I used to hate people that were like that just would sit on the sidelines, like, I could do that. We had this one guy at our gym who's like, yeah, I could do that. I'm like, but you're not fucking doing it, man. Like, don't say that anymore. Yeah. So I was like, don't be that guy. Yeah. So I've always respected the athletes that are on, they're in the fight. Like, that's a different level of commitment than I was capable of making. And then particularly when our second child was born, I was just like, yeah, I just don't see the space for it anymore. And so then when that was more clear to me, like the space isn't there, then I started to then face this other fear I had, which was, if I pull off the gas pedal from being this type of athlete, will my followers and the people that are out there respect me in the same way and still trust me as their coach? So I had to kind of unlearn that programming, which was deep in there, because I didn't have coaching success without athletic success. They always paralleled from when I left medical school until I basically really started to like wind down my peak competitive fitness level. 2018, 2019, I was 12 pounds heavier of muscle. I was squatting 400 plus pounds. I could still clean and jerk 360. I was snatching heavy. I was doing all the stuff. And then I was just like, okay, well, if I'm not going back to the sport, this level of like holding this is unnecessary. Like, it's great and I miss it. And I look back and be like, oh, I was strong as fuck. I love it.
That's fun being strong like that. Yeah, it really is.
To keep that up, it was more than was necessary. So I'm like, okay, let me pull back some of those hours of training and physical resources. And I think that was when I was like, I'm really out, I'm done. And then when the pandemic kind of hit, priorities shifted completely. I was like, well, yeah, I'm training differently now anyway. And I faced that big question of like, will people trust me and will people think and thankfully, like that phase of 2020, when people were training at home and people were stuck in their houses and trying to look for alternatives, I offered them something as a fitness coach, not as the CrossFit athlete, as just a fitness coach, that most of the people that saw me and the followership that I gained in that year were not CrossFitters. They were not people that even knew about who I was. It was a whole new group of people. And it was like I don't know, maybe this is like the first time I'm reflecting on it, but it was like such a powerful phase of my career, because I was like, whoa, people they want me to coach them. Like, they are looking to me purely for what I'm offering them as a coach, not for their like fanfare of like, you were a great athlete. I mean, I was obviously like still strong and fit and looked the part, but I wasn't, like the best athlete that they were watching. They just resonated with the message about the fitness and the approach, which was like, I think really healing for me. It was like, oh, I really am not a CrossFit athlete. I am not even pretending like I'm going to go back and compete. I've hung up the boots, and there's a new wave of like growth and success and evolution for my career. Okay. Box checked. I feel like I'm still, I can be relevant even without that label.
Yeah. And it's, that kind of answers my next question, because what I see in your journey is similar to friends of mine who played professional sports, and it's usually it's a little more abrupt. It's like, okay, they're just not making a team in their next year, and so they hang it up. And there's so much, whether we like it or not, we're fucking human. We wrap up so much of our identity in that. You the CrossFit athlete.
Yeah.
Me, the trader. I was fucking Trader Cal in Chicago. I came here. No one knew that. And if they did find out that I was a trader, they didn't know what the fuck that really was. So it didn't matter. Right. So I had a kind of a new identity, and almost like people were getting to know me just for whatever. Not that there was like some big thing to be a trader. It's not like a celebrity CrossFit athlete, but like kind of making amends with that, and really that relationship of how we identify with these things. And it sounds like that, COVID and the coaching that you provided and the resources and then the outreach, that people came, as you said, for a different version of you, something that is very fragile.
Yeah.
That CrossFit athlete. I mean, as you said, it's like you felt like you had so much riding it. There was so much of you in that, and it was proven otherwise. And so I guess that has to feel really good, because I know guys who just haven't gotten over that, and I feel for them. It's they're the center of attention. They're in the best shape. They're on TV playing hockey or whatever. And it's like all of a sudden they're out of shape and they don't really have a job. They play golf all day and they drink, and they're just like, it's not a good outcome for some of those guys. My friends, I would say, well, a couple guys. I think a lot of them are doing pretty well.
Yeah.
Considering, but
yeah, it's a big identity shift, and it's having it be forced, like almost forced on you. Like it's abrupt. That's different than like I'm making a choice to go a different direction. And it's scary to think about, like, well, how are people going to receive me, without that identity? And that was, it's interesting.
Yeah, do you lose credibility?
Yeah. Yeah. And will people even like me as a person that doesn't have all those labels,
Yeah.
And like, were people just hanging around because I was
grid champion?
Yeah. Right. I mean, everybody knew me.
That was mostly contained to like our families that knew about that. But anyway.
But it was also the second time in my life I kind of had that happen. I like post college, I only had one identity, which was like Marcus, straight A, student athlete. I thought these labels made me who I was. And when I was like, I need to go experience what life is like without those labels. And that was all the travel, when I was in my early 20s, like go abroad, go backpacking, show up, people from all over the world, staying in guest houses, staying in hostels, staying in whatever. They have no idea who I am. Are they even going to like me? Like, you're just Marcus. Like, I don't, like, what do you do? It was like, I was a student. Like, so was I. What else do you do? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't even have an identity. Like, who am I? Like, they didn't know anything about me. And then I actually got to make lots of friends, and I had fun with people, and they had fun with me. And they were like, you're cool to hang out with. We're not even talking about sports and all the things that you've done in the past. I was like, holy shit. Like, I have something to bring to the table that isn't attached to those labels. Same thing happens 15, or more like 12 years later as a fitness, athlete, like CrossFit, or like, a high level athlete inside of a community, right? That recognize that, okay, I move away from that. Oh, look at this. Like, I have something to offer as a professional that's not connected to this. Like, those are scary transitions. But like, there's something inside of each of us that is going to connect with other people. Like, your labels they don't define who, like, they're not who you are. And you get to go and try that, experiment with that, explore that. And if you're scared to do it, it's like, I get it. Totally get it.
With us, we just have so much invested in each of those identities and those masks. And it takes big moments where we do transition and we survive and we're okay and we thrive. And it's like, oh, that's right. those are just things I do. It's not who I am. It's not my essence. I may be really good at it. It may come really easy to me. I may, have a lot of people that look at me in that light. It's just not who I am. Yeah. And it's just so easy to confuse that. And again, especially in our early years, we just have so much invested in this idea, and it could be our ideas of what success are. And, for me, it was being financially successful, it was something I wanted to do from very early on. And so, like it or not, like, I worked really hard to do that. And when you're on that journey and you're fulfilling that journey, or even surpassing, what you thought, you've just invested so much mental and emotional energy towards it, unconsciously, subconsciously, consciously, like all of it, that to separate from that, to extricate yourself from that identity, easy to leave the being a trader. Like it's a little more cut and dry, but like not identifying with like the financial success. It's because the more I tie to that, it's like the further I get away from who I really am. It's just like a smokescreen of like, what is your essence? I bring this up, I guess, often because it just works for me on the podcast. But this concept of resume virtues and eulogy virtues. And so the resume virtues, the things that get you hired, things that you're really good at. And the eulogy virtues are those things about you that you want people to say, at your funeral.
Yeah. The things that make people feel what they feel about you versus what they see you're capable of doing.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that
so
was,
how can I show up more in that? It's not to just shun the eulogy virtues, but it's like, or the resume virtues. Yeah. It's like, have both.
Yeah.
But really the soul's work is the eulogy virtues. And so how can that be the anchor?
Yeah.
And then just sprinkle in the resume stuff. Like I can do that too, but that's not the essence of who I am.
I actually haven't heard you use that language before, but it's really helpful to think about because I'm going to use that vocabulary now. And it's like the way I've described it's like, I'm all for the resume virtues so long as they don't make you lack and lose and have an empty eulogy virtue list. It's like we're here to develop those. That's what's going to make whatever legacy you want to have is going to come from that. How your children, your friends, your partners, your spouse, like what they feel about you, what they remember about you, is all of those eulogy virtues you're talking about. And resume virtues can get our attention. They can steal attention and they're not important, but the more you prioritize that, like this just dies and it just becomes empty. And, I think most people who have like, trauma with their, or they're healing wounds from their parents or their, like, it's like oftentimes like the parents were very focused on the resume virtues.
Yes.
And that's why they have these like injuries. And I think about that all the time with our kids, because I was suffering, and I've suffered for many years from like high anxiety, which my solution to the anxiety was lean into the resume virtues. Those are going to be the solutions. Yeah. That's what's going to help me through. And the more I leaned into that and like tried to solve my anxiety problems with, career building things and success, realizing like, well, I'm disconnecting from my kids or I'm not as present. And, I'm like, and I was, when I was going through some of like the deepest work last November, it was like, I was just seeing it so clearly I was like, oh my God, it's like right in front of me. Like Tony Robbins does the exercise where it's like looking at your limiting self-beliefs, like, your belief systems. And it's like the exercise where it's like, okay, hone in on this belief system that you have that is limiting you. Like, okay, think out a year from now. How's it going to feel if nothing changes and you're still stuck in that, for me, resume building? Like I got to get the net worth up. I got to build the business, whatever, so he's like, okay, how are you going to feel in a year? Okay. And how are your relationships going to be in a year? And what are the people that you love the most going to feel about you? Like, okay, that feels bad. Okay, now let's go 5 years from now. Nothing changes. You're still doing that. Like, and he takes it out like 20 years. And I was just like, it was just like, and I could just see it so clear. I'm like, oh my God, like I'm going to have an empty dinner table at Thanksgiving. Nobody's going to want to come and be around me. Like that's a path. Stuck in that path is like a lonely future where my girls they don't want to come home to hang out with dad. And that was not okay. And I was also like, I don't know how to change that. I'm still stuck not knowing how to change it. But it was like, and that was when it got like super, super painful for me. I was like, oh shit, this is not good. I see it more clearly than ever that I'm living too much in that, resume virtue focused building. Cause I think that's how I'm going to ease the fear that I have inside of me. And really like when I shifted, like leaning more over here, leaning into that heart connection with my wife more, my kids, like that's what 2024 has been. It's like, oh, that's what's healing my fear more. So that has been, thank you for putting words to that so that I could kind of just think about it and articulate it in a different way.
Yeah, man. Well, thanks for sharing that. And, we were talking about this the other night, but I mean, you and I have had a very similar journey with this idea of having to be on all the time. And it's not because someone is compelling us to be on. It's comes from within. Mm-hmm. And, with that being on in that way to be your best self usually, unfortunately, involves all those. It's not about being present when you have that mindset. It's about producing and doing. And again, these things that we can do, these resume virtues. And when that has been, for years, and again, for me, I'm 52, there's been a lot of years that I've leaned on those things. And it's like the most important thing I can do is give myself grace when I fall into that old pattern again, when I really want to be connecting and open and present. And it's like, listen, dude, you like to get things right. And you've grooved this rut for years.
Yeah.
And so just be reminded. And when it happens, as we were talking about the other night, like just come in and open your heart and repair what has happened when I wasn't present, when I really wanted to be, and just share and be vulnerable. Yeah. That's really the part for me that I probably struggle with the most with Peyton is that vulnerability when I feel like I've maybe done something wrong, haven't shown up in a way that maybe she expected. And the language that I use, it's like I'm in trouble. Mm-hmm. And frankly, 52-year-old men don't use that language. The people I know, they don't say that. Mm-hmm. 7-year-old boys do. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, just how can I remind myself that, just like before, that, like, that I'm safe, that, that's just this whole notion that, to be performing and showing up as a provider, and that is a part of being in a partnership. But when it's the kind of central focus, and it's safe, I can lean on that because I can do that till the cows come home. And that's like easy in some ways. It's not without its challenges, as I shared on my Justin Donald podcast. But it's just this pausing and just, it's the journey I've done a better job of opening up.
Mm-hmm.
There's still work to do, for sure. Give myself grace. I don't want to give myself too much grace, because then it becomes, there's some inertia around that.
Sure.
And so, your wife, Megan, said something the other night, and I'm sure I've heard some form of it before, but I was like mesmerized when she said it. And it was this idea that, like, we're like in this partnership, and like, wouldn't you want to know everything about you that is, or some way that you showed up that was a challenge for your wife? Like, it's not about explaining it away, but it's about understanding her essence,
Mm-hmm.
in what moves her and what triggers her. And for so long, I've been defensive about that because I haven't wanted to be wrong. I haven't wanted to be in trouble. And so as much as I've wanted to be like, tell me more, it's been like, yeah, but this is how I meant it. Now, I can be super creative and I can gaslight, where it's like, I'm not doing the thing that I always do, but I 1,000% am.
Yeah.
But when she said that, and the way she said it, I'm not articulating it very well right now, but she said, I was like, this is the woman I'm going to spend the rest of my life with. Like, what am I doing?
Yeah. Why would I try and like explain away what she's opening up to tell me? Whether she tells me it with the daggers or she tells me it softly, however it comes, I want to know this, and I might get fixated. I'm like, oh, you said it to me so harshly that I just tensed up. I got defensive. It's like, that's not their fault. It's not her fault. I'm like, oh yeah, that was hard to hear, but God, tell me more. Like, I need to know all of this. If I stop letting it in right now and I try and defend and push it back and push it on you, like, I'm not going to learn anything. Like, just, okay, like, keep feeding me the thing. And yeah, that has been such like a big part of our work together as a couple in the last year. And honestly, until January, I could not even really let that in fully and take that in. I was like, and when it kind of clicked, I was like, oh yeah, like, I want to know more. Like, you are such a fascinating person when I just listen and I hear what there is inside of you, instead of trying to like build up this wall of like, I got to make sure I'm doing it right. I should know all these things about you already.
Oh yeah.
And I didn't know them. And now I feel bad, and I'm just going to kind of shut down and go inward.
Yeah. Go invisible.
Yeah. No, it's like, no, actually, I didn't know that about you, but that's really interesting. Like, what else, and to the point where I got so excited about it that like we were having, pillow talk every night, where I was just like normally I'd be like, I got to go to bed. It's late. Like, I got to get my sleep. I'm just like, what else can you tell me? Like, oh yeah. Like, and what else? Like, oh my God, I want to know more. Like, we're up until like midnight, and me just like, what's going, like, and she was just blown. She was in this blissful state for weeks and months of like, who are you? Like, oh my God, this is like, I don't even know how to handle all this. Like I'm having such an opportunity to talk to you and share parts of me that I haven't felt like I could share. And it was like this, and then unfortunately that fed my like, ooh, I'm doing it right. Like I'm doing it right kind of thing. Like I was getting this positive feedback.
Yeah. We fuck it up.
We did fuck it up a little bit, but it was so special. I mean, it is still so special. But yeah, it was like a complete reframe of like, no, lean in more. Like what else is there? Like there's a lot there to learn. And at any stage, I'm sure, of the relationship, I don't know how many, it doesn't matter how many years it's been. It's like, there's stuff inside of that person, certainly with her, that wants to come out.
And just, if you just take it from a human point of view, like you take any human, there's so much inside of them that is to know their story. And I think you hit on something that has been the source of like tension for me around it is, fuck, I should already know this.
Yeah.
So I'm afraid to open that can of worms because I don't know what kind of reaction I'm going to get. And I'm going to be blowing my cover.
Oh, I just did it 3 nights ago at dinner. Like,
yeah, you did.
Yeah. Oh God. She said something and I was like, oh fuck. I didn't know. I missed that. How can I get out of this one?
How can I save myself? Yeah.
Yeah.
And you had a challenging conversation that was uncomfortable. But what happened? You stayed with it you got through it and fucking you learned. I'm sure she learned something too, but you particularly learned something in that moment. And there was an opportunity for growth.
Yeah.
It's hard to remember that when you're feeling like I've fucked up. I'm trying to do triage here, so it's not too bad.
Yeah. I like what you said too earlier, where it was like, you make growth, you start doing things in a way that feels more in alignment with how you want to show up for a partner. But you have like maybe decades of like, what'd you say? Like grooving that rut.
Oh yeah. Kind of that rut.
That rut's already, it's deep in there. So it's like you making progress, but then, falling back into the rut a little bit. It's like having the grace to like, be like, hey, that's okay. Like,
you're aware that there's a rut now and you fell back in it. Like, by the way, you were just out of that rut. Like, fucking celebrate that.
Totally.
Yeah.
That's huge for me.
I wonder what it is, like I'm sitting here thinking about this and it's like when Peyton, that's one of the amazing things she does, one of the many, but like she communicates. She shares what her needs are and how maybe I'm not meeting them or, which is something that I need to do for her benefit. I need to let her know what my needs are.
Yeah.
It doesn't do her any good if I have needs, I'm not expressing them.
Right.
I don't know what they are. That's on me.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of, patterning there where, you grow up a young kind of resilient kid and you think I got this. Mm-hmm. And that's great to be able to have that self-reliance. I said the other night, it's not great in a partnership to really lean on that.
No.
Right? But that's what happens, or that's what has happened. But I just like, I'm kind of doing this in real time. Like, what's going on for me that when she starts with this and opens up to me, because it's not easy to her, because she doesn't want to quote unquote hurt my feelings or whatever. Sometimes she does, for sure. Sometimes back in the day, she wouldn't mind hurting the feelings. I get it. I get that. But am I afraid that this is going to start a snowball and then by the end she's walking out on me? Mm. Like, is that like, I feel like there's some version of that. Because what am I so afraid of? Mm-hmm. We've been together for 25 years. She has continued to show up when maybe not a lot of people would have, because I was checked out. I was in deep resume world. And what am I afraid of? And I think that's like a big thing I need to get over, where it's like, and that's where what Megan said the other night, just fucking, that was it. Like she articulated that whole thing where I felt it. I was like I felt Peyton as like truly my partner, not someone that I love and, that I'm just like trying not to get in trouble like too much. Mm-hmm. It's just weird. It's like, fuck, like there's something there that I'm afraid of, and it's not rational. It's absolutely not rational.
Yeah.
And so that's something for me to, this has been so fucking helpful for me to just expand on what we, touched on at dinner. We had a beautiful conversation, the four of us, and, that just like landed it in a different place for me. There's a real fear, irrational fear for me that I think once I bring that to the light, it just, I think a lot of things shift. I understand like cognitively that there's the thing here, but the fear still shows up in the moment. So maybe there's some strategies about taking a breath, maybe taking 5 minutes. Like, I don't know what it is, but when I'm in the moment, I'm in like, unfortunately, usually in reaction mode.
Yeah.
And, try not to take too much, damage.
Yeah. I go in those same patterns. And I think the fear is, for me, it's connected to like this person. I think she expects me to know. I think there's an expectation that like I would know this. I don't. She's going to think less of me. I'm not going to be like, she won't love me as much, or she won't think as highly of me, or there's something there. And in reality, like if I show more curiosity, and that highlights the fact that I don't know something, but I'm leaning into like wanting to get to know it and learn it, that's the quality she's deeply seeking. She doesn't actually want me to know everything. She just wants me to be curious enough to try and learn. And she's shown already that she's patient with me not knowing stuff, right? That's like, I've been with this person for this long and they're still here and they haven't like walked away and, gone and found a better, partner. It's like she's just craving to have me be curious about what it is that didn't work for her, or that she wanted to express, or a need, or that feeling that she's having that feels like she's not being seen. It's like, I didn't need you to see me in that moment. I need you to want to know why I felt unseen.
Yeah.
And if you just like lean into that, I'm saying it so clearly right now, but it's like in those moments, it's not accessible. And there's tools and there's something that's going to like, but even talking about it now is like, a regular dose of remembering it outside of that relationship, remembering it with other people, like having an exchange. And like this is it's like sharpens the focus on like, okay, that's actually really what's important.
Yeah. Well, this is a great example of one of the many things I love about you, how open you are about the challenges and struggles you've had. And I think it's one of the many things that separate you in what you've created and how you've shown up. And I mean, the stuff you've shared recently, I would love for you to just touch on, this kind of idea of body image. I think anybody would look at you, and if they just followed on your social media, and if they've followed you for a while and they maybe hadn't read the more heartfelt, stuff, they would say, "Oh, it's gotta be awesome. Like you look great. You're so fit. Da 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 da." And even me, I've known you for quite a long time. Reading your posts about what that journey has been was, I guess I don't want to say it's surprise. I guess I didn't expect it because it's a classic. Like it's a great reminder. We don't know what the fuck anybody's going through.
Yeah, that's so much.
And that share was so powerful and so vulnerable and raw. And I think it did just that and many other things to show people like, I'm not just a pretty face with this physique. Like I am a human and we're all in this human thing together. Yeah. And I think that's why you've continued to grow your audience, is because you're relatable. Yeah, and you're not just pitching programs to people. Like you're you're sharing like the shit. You're giving them upbeat stuff too. That's the beauty. There's like a great mix and more upbeat stuff, which is great because people don't want to.
Yeah, they don't want to be all down all the time. Like, damn, Debbie Downer over here. Come on now. Let's just show me a good pump session real quick. Yes. Just give me an EMOM. I want an EMOM badly. Yeah. Well, it's, going back actually to like my early 20s, like when I was 20 years old, I like did this, like my first, maybe even 19 years old. Like I discovered how manipulating nutrition could change my body. And I was like a fit, like soccer player, like, I don't know. I mean, I wasn't like chiseled and ripped, but I was like muscular. I had
pretty lean
ish.
Yep.
But then there was like this phase, like in college, I got injured, hand injury, thumb ligament, goalkeeper put me kind of on the sideline for a while.
Oh shit. Yeah.
So I wasn't playing. I was just showing up to practice and literally sitting on the training table and just watching because I couldn't do it. And they didn't want to like have me on the field playing, it's just you're out. And I put on some weight. Like I didn't even know it was happening. I was so unconscious of any of that. Like I was a guy, I fit, had muscle, whatever. And I remember one day, like this kid on the team, like we were playing Shirts for Skins and he like made a comment about my body. He was like, "Oh, Philly, you're looking a little abdominous," which was his way of like, I was kind of putting on some fat. Like I was like rounder and, I'd put on probably like 15 pounds from just like not moving. And it really like, it fucked with me. And I think that next spring, that was like in the wintertime, that next spring, like I really dove into like, nutrition and like going on a restrictive diet. And I got ripped. Like I got like the first time in my life, I was like, oh damn, I got abs. Like I looked a different way. And that kind of I just kept going on that route for a bit. And I got really overly obsessed with it. It wasn't like I wasn't feeling the negative consequences yet. It was like my energy was up. I was in the best shape of my life. I was looking really lean. But, you go down that route long enough, at some point you get past like the feel good stage and you kind of get into like, oh, this is like hard. And so I had that first experience of getting into great physical shape, but I was just depleted. I wasn't eating enough. I was training like a maniac. I was trying to do too much and had this like really negative outcome from it, which was like feeling like, oh my gosh, I like this way I'm looking. I don't know how to sustain it. I don't know how to keep it up. Like, okay, my body is just sending me hunger signals. I then binge and then I'm like trying to do this thing. And then I was trying to ride it for too long. And then eventually I got a major injury. I think as a result of just being overtrained, undernourished, doing too much, stress. And I, like major back injury, couldn't train for a while, like was out
How did you sustain the injury?
It was just, again, it was like overtraining. I remember we were doing like,
was it in the gym?
Yeah, it was like an in the gym thing,
okay.
like heavy training, heavy lifting. I used to remember like my low back would kind of get hot and I would just be like, oh, whatever. And I just push through it. And then one day I like got hotter than normal on the couch later that evening, feeling like pain down my leg, like all the signs of like a disc herniation of some sort, some nerve pain, all that. And then it just got worse and lasted for months, and then I just like stopped weight training and everything just stopped. So I went from like ripped guy thriving to ripped guy not thriving to injured ripped guy that's, soon after that was like not in shape, not muscular, not eating well. And I like kind of felt that I saw like the bad relationship I had with food and my body. And I was like, I was determined to never like kind of go back to that. I was like, that was a horrible experience that really messed with me. But it kind of led to some more like up and down, really shitty like relationship to food, relationship to my body for the next couple of years. And then I found CrossFit and I was like, I'd healed, recovered my back a bit, was capable, started training for performance, was just training, eat good food, go train. And, I was like, oh, look at this. Like I feel good. I like the way I look, but I'm not thinking about counting calories and counting things. And so I got into like a much better relationship to my body. I mean, I was aware of having muscles and abs but I wasn't so fixated on it. It was like CrossFit helped me heal like my body image issues and that kind of disordered like connection to food and disordered eating for sure. And then CrossFit, that was a bunch of years. We already went through that whole thing. And then I kind of got out of the like sport focus mode. And then I was now coaching people and I got really into like, I kind of crept back into like being body image focused. Like I'm now this fitness coach that's trying to coach people, but also trying to gain their attention. I was getting like sort of this positive reinforcement. I'm like, man, you're ripped. And like, oh man, you're so shredded. And because I was like eating a particular way and I was getting tan and I was filming content in the backyard and people were liking what, they were, this is like 2021.
You had great content in that backyard.
Yeah. And I was getting all the like, you must be on steroids like every day, which to me was a compliment. It's like, oh, this guy his physique is just, so it's impossible to have a kind of physique, knowing that I'm doing it drug free. And I'm like, okay, like I'm killing it.
Yeah.
And it just got me a little bit more and more focused on like my body and how I looked. And then I'm like, okay, well, that's a thing that I need to keep. So I need to maintain, so if you go back to
that's working.
Yeah, that's working. Like that was me in my 20s. I was like, oh, I like this. I got to maintain it. But there's a shelf life to how long you can do that. And I kind of found myself back in that rhythm in 2020, 2021, 2022. Like there was these periods where I was like, man, I know more now. I'm aware that this is happening. I'm feeling the dips. But I'm in this conflict of like, what do I do? And so just, being in front of the camera, being shirtless, doing the fitness thing, knowing more, even more than I knew when I was in my 20s. I'm like, I can sort through this. Like as a coach, like I can be more thoughtful. I wasn't eating like some crazy deprivation diet that I did when I was in my 20s. I was sustaining on good quality food, making sure I was eating and like trying to eat enough, but I was still trying to maintain just like really low body fat for long extended periods of time. And
what percentage are we talking about?
I mean, probably in like the 6 to 8% range, which is, if on that scale, like 3 to 5% is like what bodybuilders go out on stage at. So I wasn't like far off. Wow. I didn't have as much muscle as those guys, but very lean, and I was like, and it just made my energy low, So the story that I learned from it is like anybody that's going through a process of body transformation, it's like there's a point at which you feel good, your body's changing in a positive way, and then be aware of the signs of when that starts to change. It's like your energy starts to dip, your sleep starts to get disrupted, you know, you start to have mood swings. Like not everyone ever gets there, but if you ever see those things, it's like, hey, that's problematic. Like what good is pushing your body changes more when your sleep sucks, when you're cranky and you're moody, when, you know, all of these other things are starting to like, you have low energy, you can't even show up. Like it was clear to me, it was like a certain time of day would come and I'd just be like, ugh, I can't engage with the kids, right? Or I'm waking up 4 times in the middle of the night for no reason. And, you know, getting like nighttime cramping, like, you know, like these, I was like, this isn't good. But how do I change the trajectory of that? You know, it's like, oh, just go out and get fatter. That's how you fix it.
Yeah.
It's like, ooh, that's a little tricky. Ooh. Like I'm going to go out and just like put on a bunch of weight. Like, how's that going to play out? Like, how's that going to, I don't know how to do that. I'm programmed a different way. I've been following this programming for a little too long. So it was like, you know, seeing my body start to shift. Like, okay, I need to start eat more calories, like up my calories to 4,000 calories a day. And, you know, I need to like put on some weight. I need to
Were they fun calories? Were they
some,
like ice cream and shit like that?
I mean, I'm a big proponent of like now in my nutrition coaching for people, it's like everybody should be eating some fun foods on a regular basis. You know, this idea of like, you're just going to eat clean and just keep it so pure. It's like, that just doesn't work for most people.
Yeah. It becomes so much like, for me, it creates so much stress.
Yeah. It creates stress, and it creates then a bad relationship with what those foods are. They become this like off limits thing. And at some point we all want to go and dip into the dark side, and then you just overindulge in it. And so, yeah, like I've definitely had the fun foods. Like I eat popcorn and ice cream every day, you know?
Yeah.
It's not 80% of my diet. It's 10% of my diet, but it's like these foods, you know, are part of it. But it was more just like the active pursuit of trying to like put some more weight back on, or eat in excess, and know that it's like, this gives me energy. It allows me to show up better. It makes me like my mood comes back. My, you know, sleep gets better. And I'm still like, it's still a challenge for me. Like there are days where I know I should probably eat more, but I'm like, oh, I just struggle with like what's that downstream going to look like when my body changes. And it's interesting, as I shared a lot of that. I mean, you know, my thought was that's not going to resonate with a lot of people, right? There are not a lot of people that are like, hey, you're too lean. You're too, you know, you got to eat some more. But it turns out that there's a lot of people that reached out and were really like moved by like my sharing that, because they're in this mindset of like, the only way I can have the body I want is to like deprive myself.
Yes.
And depriving them looks a little different than it did for me.
Yeah.
But it's still this state of like, I'm kind of just in this like deficit, less is more mentality around food. I got to move a lot. I'm going to go exercise a lot. I'm not going to eat very much. And it's just, it becomes a really tough pattern for people that they feel stuck in. They don't feel like there's another way. And in those phases when people don't have awareness and they're just getting these powerful human hormonal signals to go out and get energy, go out and get food because they're deprived, then they end up overeating and binging. And then they go and try and exercise it off. They go and run, 5 miles the next day, and then they don't eat anything for the day, and they get into these cycles. And there's a lot of that in the fitness community. There's so much of this like sort of binging and then using exercise as your purge, and oh, I got to just like deficit. And then, they get overwhelmed by those physical signals that tell, or those like internal signals of like, hey, you got to get some energy, go get some food. And it's a big reason why, I've shifted a lot of my coaching, like language around nutrition to like, hey, this, like, you got to fuel yourself so that you can live and perform and train and move in a way that's going to create like good feeling and make you be able to be consistent rather than this eat less, move less mentality that everyone has fallen victim to.
Yeah.
You see people like they barely move, they barely eat, they don't have a lot of energy, and they're maybe they're thin, but it's like is that how we want to live? Like just sort of in this like quiet, do nothing mode all the time. It's like, no, let's shift that mentality.
Yeah, dude. I think that's really powerful. And I think what makes it even more resonant is the word you used is, deprive. We deprive ourselves. And so, I haven't had the same challenges with the kind of body image necessarily. And, caloric restriction and trying to get super lean. But I have gone through many periods where I'm just depriving myself of certain things, and it gets super rigid. And Peyton brings it up. She's like, "It's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can have the cookie. It's okay."
Yeah.
And I'm just in the mindset of, well, right now I'm not doing any sugar. I'm not, and it just ultimately doesn't work. It's not sustainable. And it's like, okay, so you don't do sugar for a month or whatever. Like, cool. You're going back. Like, probably when you go back to it, you're going to go deep.
You're going to go hard.
Yeah. And it's like, so what are we doing here?
Mm-hmm.
Just like little doses here and there are fine. And so I think that's what I'm trying to work towards now. The caffeine thing, I think ultimately I can see myself like getting off caffeine for an extended period. That one is, we talked about it last night. It's like, I don't like the way my body reacts when I go off it. And I have that first cup after being off it for weeks. That feels awesome.
Yeah.
And then the cycle starts soon after that. And it's like, I need to drink coffee to get back to baseline. And I don't like myself on that ride. I don't like myself being on that ride. And when I've been off it recently, it's like, I really like this. I like waking up. If I'm tired, it's because I'm just tired. I didn't maybe sleep great. It's not because I need coffee to come in, shut down the adenosine receptors and, have my body not know when it's tired.
Yeah.
And so that's when I finally learned how caffeine worked. And for people who don't know, I always thought, and I think you said the same thing, that you drink like caffeine just gives you energy. So it comes in your body, it zaps it with a bunch of energy, and it just kind of leaves your system. It's not how it works. You drink it, there's a molecule that attaches to your adenosine receptors. Those receptors drop adenosine into your body to let you know when you're tired. And so those get blocked. And so your body doesn't know that it's supposed to be some version of tired at that point. And so you feel like you have energy. And then once that wears off, and maybe it's the next day, you wake up, it dumps that adenosine in, and the stuff that it didn't dump in, and then extra. So you go below what your normal baseline is. And so like when I just understood how that pathway works and what it was actually doing, it's like, oh, I'm just like, every time I go to caffeine, I'm starting that cycle.
Yeah.
So do I want to be on that ride? Maybe I do.
Yeah.
Sometimes decaf coffee isn't as great,
Yeah. Yeah. You're just stealing a little bit from tomorrow for today. That's really all it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I think time to wrap. We're at 2 hours ish.
Boom.
Dude, I've been going like hour 15 lately, but it's just, this one just.
Yeah. I mean, there was like probably 2 moments where I thought like, oh, he might wrap right now. And then it was like, we're into something deep.
Yeah.
We're going to go, all right, push it back another 20, 30. We're going to keep going here. That's great. I love it.
Man, this was such a long time coming.
It sure has been. Yeah.
I think I was out of town last time you were in Austin, and I've just been dying to get you on the podcast, and I definitely wanted to do it in person.
Yeah.
Was so grateful that we got to spend time with you and Megan before she headed back home. Dinner was great. We got to play golf today with Ron White. We had a blast.
That was wild.
Right?
Really
we got
good.
a little workout in. And now we've got my weekly men's group over. We're going to go hang with the boys.
Yeah.
Probably watch a little hockey. And then, this has been amazing. Man, I love you. I'm so stoked for all the work you're doing and how you're showing up. And just that openness and vulnerability is, like I said, it makes you, who on the outside wouldn't seem relatable to many people who are on a fitness journey. It's like, I'll never be able to do that. It's like, don't get, that's a smoke screen. There's that heart that you open up and you allow people in, and there's a deep connection there with your audience. I feel it, I see it. And so I just love that you're doing that. So thank you.
Thank you, Cal. Yeah, man. Coming down here, and I felt this connection to you ever since, we wrapped our grid journey. And it's been this from a distance. And I had like this very brief moment on the drive over the other night to your house with Megan, where we were both kind of like, I wonder if we're still going to be able to like connect with them. Like, is this real? Like, we haven't actually seen them. And we were like, we haven't seen you in 7 years. Like, is this real? And I had like just a moment of just a blip of doubt. And then the moment you guys opened the door, it just was like washed away. I was like, oh, we're home. Like, this feels so good. So it's great to be back in your presence and Peyton's presence and Lindsay and the whole family. And it's really been special. So thank you for having us.
Yeah. And I'll just say from our end, like, that was, it felt so deeply connected that night at our house.
Yeah.
Everything from, pre-dinner and hanging out, and then we got to dinner, and after dinner, the conversation, it was just like, one of the favorite couples dinners I've ever had. So Thanks for that. It was awesome.
Likewise.
All right, let's go see these boys.
Let's do it.